Thank you very much. It was wonderful to do that gongyo with you all. And I couldn't help feeling how pleased Nichiren Daishonin and all the Buddhas of the universe must have been to have felt that gongyo in their lives, which they no doubt did, just as the Gosho teaches. So today, as you know, we're going to study together the Gosho called The True Entity of Life, an extremely important Gosho because it really summarizes a great deal of what you find in the two most important theses of Nichiren Daishonin, which are the true object of worship and the opening of the eyes. Two Goshos that he wrote on Sado Island, and this Gosho too was written on Sado Island to a man called Sirenbo, who was actually a priest of the Tendai sect, who had been exiled by his sect, presumably, through, of course, the authorities of the day, to Sado Island, just the same as Nichiren Daishonin had. We don't know exactly why he was exiled there, but I rather guess, since he was so enthusiastic to learn Nichiren Daishonin's teachings, he probably felt that somehow or other there was something missing in the teachings of Tendai sect, and indeed in Buddhism as it was being taught that day. So the Gosho was actually written to Sirenbo on Sado Island on the 17th of May, 1273. 17th of May is also the day we first opened the Richmond Center. So therefore it can never be forgotten by those of us who were present then. And we also discovered in the process of opening the Richmond Center on the 17th of May that in the lunar calendar, in relation to the calendar we use today, the 17th of May is the 28th of April. And that, of course, is the day Nichiren Daishonin declared Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. So it's a significant day, whatever happens. This was in the third year of Nichiren Daishonin's exile on Sado Island. He actually arrived there in October 1271, after what was known as the Tatsunokuchi persecution, which many of you will know the story concerning it. And he finally, his exile finished on the 13th of March 1274. So as you know, he went to Sado Island in exile because they failed to kill him, or execute him might be a more correct technical term. They failed to chop his head off on that beach of Tatsunokuchi. And they failed because, as you know, some extraordinary phenomena. It was a comet, or a meteor or something. If it was a meteor, it was a very large one. And it shot across the sky and brilliantly lit everything. And so the soldiers, the samurai who were due to execute him, totally panicked. Of course, people were very superstitious in those days. But I think even in these days, if something shot across the sky and lit everything up brilliantly, we might be in a bit of a panic ourselves. So one can't blame them for that. And Nichiren Daishonin couldn't get them to get on with the execution. He called out to them, according to his account, called On the Buddha's Behavior in Volume 1 of the major writings. He yelled at the soldiers, "Why didn't you get on with it and finish the job?" And they couldn't. They were paralyzed with fear. And later, he wrote in another Gosho, after he'd reached Sado Island, that, as he described it, Nichiren was beheaded at Tatsunokuchi, but his soul went on to Sado Island. So what he meant by that was that this extraordinary incident at Tatsunokuchi, which, by the way, is recorded in all Japanese history books, this extraordinary incident was actual proof that he was one with the universe. As you know, on the way down to Tatsunokuchi Beach, he told the 240 or so samurai who were escorting him there on horseback, and he told them to stop by a shrine. And he prayed out loud in front of all these samurai and, of course, those who were in charge of them. And he demanded the protection of the Buddhist gods. He said to the Buddhist gods in this great prayer, if you fail me, then you've broken all the promises you made to Shakyamuni Buddha, upon which he then got on his horse and continued on his way to be executed. This was an incredible thing, but as you've heard me say, he was really showing us there how we should challenge big obstacles and difficulties. That sort of challenging. What are you doing? We're saying to those Buddhist gods, leaving me in this fix. I've got a mission to perform. We all know that his mission was ultimately to inscribe the Daigons. So he challenged them in that very strong way. Same way we should, if we're in difficulties, we should do that. We're not sitting, before some almighty God begging for mercy. We chant Brahmaku really strongly and demand the Buddhist gods come to our rescue. Of course, I'm only talking about it when you really are up against it. You don't need to chant like that with that sort of force all the time. But I'm sure many of you have proved this. Certainly, twice in my term of practice, I've proved it. And I was in a great fix. And it worked. So this is why he did that. But most important, too, is the fact that he said that Nichiren was beheaded. What he meant by that was that through proving that he was one with the universe, he proved that he was actually the original Buddha. And also, of course, the Buddha of the latter day of the law. The human being who was one with the universe, who untaught by any master, declared the invocation of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and ultimately inscribed the Gohonzon and explained how ordinary human beings like us can practice and attain Buddhahood in this lifetime. So this process is known as discarding the transient identity and revealing the true. In Japanese, it's called Hoshaku Kenpon. So in teaching Sarenbo about his own understanding of life, he asked him to be very careful. In the PS to this Gosha, which we shan't read tonight, he says, keep these matters to yourself. Nichiren has herein committed to writing the teachings of his own enlightenment. In other words, he didn't want to stir up a storm of trouble to descend on Sarenbo, nor for that matter, at that particular point in time, on his other followers. It was bad enough as it was. He declared in his earlier days that he was the votary of the Lotus Sutra, and all hell fell on him. If he'd said he was the original Buddha, can you imagine what would have happened? So therefore he said, please keep what I'm saying to yourself. Use it yourself. And he said that to a lot of his other disciples at that time. Of course, everything was moving towards his ultimate supreme mission of inscribing the Daigons. So he lived in terrible conditions on Sado Island. Yet he wrote so many of his greatest Gosha, his greatest teachings at that time. Living in a rotten old hut, in a burial ground which was for criminals, people who could not be given a name, unknown people. The weather on Sado to this day, as you can imagine, hasn't changed. In the winter, it's a terrible place to be, especially in those days, primitive housing, no heating, that sort of thing. So really it's an incredible lesson to us. We start moaning, don't we? When the slightest thing goes wrong. If you can't get hot water, when you want your bath, we really start complaining. Or if the electrician doesn't come to mend the washing machine or whatever it may be, we really groan and complain. But in those days, it was terrific and terrible. And the marvelous thing is his spirit never even wavered, absolutely shone through everything he wrote and said at that time. So convinced he was that despite all those difficulties, he knew the gods and power of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo was limitless, and that he would win. No matter what, he would win if he stuck to it. And he certainly did, because he died naturally, having completed his mission in inscribing the daigons. So, like all gosho, this gosho can be divided into the first part, which is generally termed preparation, and then the middle part, which is known as revelation, and the final part, which is transmission. How the teachings can be transmitted to future generations, or something to do with the passing or transmitting of the message of that gosho is found in the last part. So preparation is often quite long, and it's a good lesson for us. We're often terribly bad at preparing people with what we're going to say. I guess you've noticed it. Maybe you've spotted it in your own life, or you've certainly spotted it in other people who suddenly start talking about something you haven't got a clue what they're talking about. And you say, hold on a moment, wait a minute, what is this you're saying to me? Nichiren Daishonin never causes us to say that, because he's really prepared the way all the way, as all Buddhas have. All Buddhist teachings follow that sequence of preparation, revelation, and transmission. And it would be great if we followed it too in our communication with others. Good. So we now turn to the gosho, and Suzanne is going to read the first 2 paragraphs.
The true entity of life. Question. In the Hoben chapter of Volume 1 of the Lotus Sutra is the passage, the true entity of all phenomena can only be understood and shared between Buddhas. This reality consists of appearance, nature, and their consistency from beginning to end. What does this passage mean? Answer. It means that all beings and their environments in any of the 10 worlds, from hell at the lowest to Buddhahood at the highest, are, without exception, the manifestations of Myoho Renge Kyo. Where there is an environment, there is life within it. Miao Lo states, both life Shoho and its environment Eho always manifest Myoho Renge Kyo. He also states, the true entity is invariably revealed in all phenomena, and all phenomena invariably possess the 10 factors. The 10 factors invariably function within the 10 worlds, and the 10 worlds invariably entail both life and its environment. And both the life and environment of hell exist within the life of Buddha. On the other hand, the life and environment of Buddha do not transcend the lives of common mortals. Such precise explanations leave no room for doubt. Thus, all life in the universe is clearly Myoho Renge Kyo. Even the 2 Buddhas, Shakyamuni and Taho, are the functions of Myoho Renge Kyo, who appear to bestow its blessings upon mankind. They manifested themselves as the 2 Buddhas and, seated together in the treasure tower, nodded in mutual agreement.
I don't know about you, but I find just even reading this first paragraph makes me very moved. It's difficult perhaps to say why, because it's quite complicated, isn't it? And rather difficult to understand. Yet somehow it's so moving, because he's talking in such a calm way about everything to do with life. So I hope when you got a bit of time in the next couple of days, you might decide just to read it again on your own. In fact, it covers some of the greatest Buddhist principles, which describe what I call the mechanics of life, how life works and ticks. It's an amazing thing in such a few lines. So the true entity, of course, you understand right from the beginning. The true entity of life is Myoho Renge Kyo. That's very clear, I think. The mystic law, as we call it sometimes, of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And in that paragraph, you also see the mention of what is called Ichinen Sanzen, 3,000 realms or states in every moment of existence, Ichinen Sanzen. And you also find in it what is called in Japanese Eshofuni, which is the inseparability of ourselves, our own lives, and the environment which surrounds us. Everything we do, say, think, somehow or other affects everything around us along the link of life which exists between us and all living beings. And then he also talks about the two Buddhas. Down at the end of that paragraph, even the two Buddhas, Shakyamuni and Taho, are the functions of Myoho Renge Kyo, who appeared to bestow its blessings upon mankind. They manifested themselves as the two Buddhas, and seated together in the treasure tower, nodded in mutual agreement. So that is concerned with a principle which is called Kyochi Myogo. Kyochi Myogo. So those two Buddhas represent Shakyamuni Chi and Taho Kyo. So Kyo is the objective view of life, the objective reality of life. The life that exists outside you in all its forms, including the Gohonzon. The Gohonzon is Kyo, the objective reality of life, or the essence of life is contained in the Gohonzon, in all that is inscribed in those characters on it. And Chi is subjective. Furthermore, it's subjective wisdom. That is you, or me, or a Buddha, or Nichiren Buddhism himself, who is chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo to the Gohonzon. And Myogo means fused together. So Kyochi Myogo means the fusion which you achieve between you, your inner self, and the Gohonzon. And in turn, with everything else that exists in your whole environment, as is explained in the other principle called Eshofuni, the inseparability of each one of us with our environment. So most importantly, of course, in this principle of Kyochi Myogo, Gohonzon conveys in it the essence of Buddhahood. So we fuse with that Gohonzon, with our own beings, and as a result, we discover that Buddhahood actually exists in us, and that what is on the Gohonzon is just a reflection of that fact. It takes time, of course, and we need proof and so on to discover this. So the Gohonzon contains on it, either side of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Shakyamuni Buddha and Taho Buddha. Shakyamuni, who is the first recorded Buddha, and Taho, who is a legendary Buddha. Taho represents that objective reality, and Shakyamuni represents the subjective wisdom. And the two nod in agreement. They're fused together. It's a lovely thought, isn't it? Like Suzanne and I sort of trying. Fused. and in total agreement about Buddhism and Buddhahood. This is what is meant by Kyoshi Myogo, and what is meant by the two Buddhas sitting together in the Gohonzon. So the important part of this is, of course, that through the theory of Ichinen Sanzen and the fact that we can fuse with the Gohonzon, and through that with our Buddhahood, we can express our Buddhahood in 3,000 different ways. It's as powerful as that. But equally, of course, if you're not in front of the Gohonzon, and someone has made you angry, what you will express in that moment is anger in 3,000 different ways. So the human being, of course, is incredibly powerful, though we find it difficult to believe and understand, and we're very ignorant about these mechanics of life that he's explaining here. So when you chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo to the Gohonzon, you are creating that fusion, right, between you and the objective reality, between you and your environment. And your environment reacts according to your life state. Therefore, when you are more and more creating through the practice which Nichiren Daishonin taught us, a life based on Buddhahood, it is your Buddhahood which is, as it were, not only going into you or not only manifest in you, but it also goes out into your environment and reflects back on you. So just the same as your anger will reflect back in what happens to you, so if you're in Buddhahood, the environment reflects back Buddhahood to you and you gain benefit. Right? So it's an incredible thing. I mean, we can sit here with this passage, and read it. But there are millions, trillions of people who haven't had that opportunity yet. We forget how fortunate we are that we can learn about life. And of course, through learning about life, we can use our lives more and more in the best possible way. And we understand more and more what is going on around us. So I haven't got time to go into Ichinen Sanzen today. But it's not difficult, actually. It sounds difficult, but it isn't. It's just explaining how you express your life state out into your environment and indeed into yourself too. That's what it's doing. So you understand there are 10 worlds, you know those. You understand too that within each world the others exist. So 10 by 10 is 100. And then there are the 10 factors, which we've just recited. We recite it so many times every day. Nyoze so, nyoze sho, nyoze ta, and so on. So these 10 factors cover the expression of that life state. So first of all, there is the life state, your physical life state, your spiritual life state, and the state in the very heart or core essence of your life. And then that life state has power. The fourth one, power has influence. And influence creates an inherent cause, an inherent tendency or trend in your life. It can be good or bad, right? And that inherent cause appears in the end, at some point when the time and the circumstances are right, as an external cause, something you do to someone or something and so on. And when you make that cause, immediately the effect of it is lodged in your life, and in due course of time, that effect lodged in your life will appear at the right moment in the form of a manifest effect. And then the last thing you recite every day in Gongyo so many times is Homma Kukyoto, with absolute consistency from beginning to end. So it doesn't matter, what state of life you're in, it will express itself with absolute consistency, not only in every part of you, both spiritually and physically, but also it'll express itself into your environment in the same way. So when you hear that, I must say it's quite a spur to do more and more to try to make Buddhahood the main state of life one's in, realizing how strongly it expresses itself in that way. And so then that makes 1,000. There are 10 factors. We already reached 100. So 1,000 by them. And that expression of the life state is in 3 different realms. Firstly, the realm of yourself. Secondly, the realm of society, amongst the people that you live with, or who are in your neighborhood, community. And then the land itself. So this can easily be forgotten, the land itself. So a farmer in Buddhahood is going to create a fantastic, rich, wonderful farm, because his Buddhahood is expressed in that way. His wisdom is working. He sows his seeds at exactly the right, and so on. So, with consistency from beginning to end, you express that life state in those 3 realms, which makes it 3,000, 3,000. So this is in every moment of existence. It's an incredible thought, isn't it? In every moment, not even seconds or minutes, moments, you're expressing your life state in that way. That's colossal, isn't it? But we can't grasp it so easily. It's colossal. This is why Buddhism puts the emphasis on ichine. Whatever we strongly wish in our hearts, if we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which immediately, as Nichiren Daishonin taught, activates Buddhahood in your life. You can't chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo sincerely without Buddhahood being manifest in your life. So, what you pray for is so powerful. But the problem is, isn't it, that we tend to start saying, especially when it's a difficult problem, I don't need this solved. I mean, that's the problem, isn't it, of our karma. These doubts that whittle down the strength and power of that prayer. Anyway, that is what he's, in rather few words, that is what he's describing in this wonderful first paragraph. So if you've got time when you get home, or tomorrow or the next day or the weekend or something, please do read it through again. And you can discern then all these various principles being described, the mechanics of life itself. Okay, let's move on now to the next paragraph.
No one but Nichiren has ever revealed these teachings. Tiantai, Miaolo, and Dengyo knew in their hearts, but did not declare them aloud. There was reason for their silence. The Buddha had not yet entrusted them with this mission. The time had not yet come, and they had not been the Buddha's disciples from ages past. No one but Jogyo, Muhengyo, and the other leaders of the bodhisattvas of the earth can appear during the first 500 years of the latter day to spread the law of Myoho Renge-kyo. Only they are qualified to inscribe the object of worship which physically manifests the ceremony of the 2 Buddhas seated together in the treasure tower. This is because both the law and the object of worship are the reality of Ichinen Sanzen revealed in the Juryo chapter of the essential teaching.
So Nichiren Daishonin says there, they had not been the Buddha's disciples from ages past. What he's referring to there is the story of the treasure tower in the Lotus Sutra, in which from this place where Shakyamuni, in this fantastic treasure tower, which represents life itself, and Shakyamuni is sitting there with Paho, and he looks out, and all his disciples are grouped round, probably hundreds of them. And he says, who is going to teach the great law in the dreaded age of Mapo? The age that we live in now, the dreaded age of Mapo. This was 3,000 years or more ago, he said this, in the dreaded age of Mapo. And all his disciples said, I will, with enthusiasm, of course. And he had to say to them, I'm sorry, chums. You haven't got a chance. Really, he didn't say it quite like that. But he said to them, you're just not strong enough, tough enough to put up with what you'll be up against in the age of Mapo. And as he said that, out of the earth, hundreds of thousands of people appeared. And to the astonishment and chagrin of his disciples, he said to them, these are the people who will teach the great law in the dreaded age of Mapo, words to that effect. And of course, the Lotus Sutra goes on to say that there were as many as the grains of sand of, I think it's 10,000 Ganges rivers. Well, that's not a mathematical thing. What it meant was it was a huge number of people. And they were the people who he said would teach the law. So as you read the Gosho more and other Goshos, gradually we come to understand that we must be those bodhisattvas who have appeared out of the earth to teach the law in the dreaded age of Mapo. All of you here were, as it were, in that prediction which Shakyamuni made. So when we chant Daimoku and do Gongyo to the Gohonzon, we are exactly in the same position. Gohonzon is the treasure tower. We are around it, chanting Daimoku and doing Gongyo, exactly as Shakyamuni described in his predictions in the Lotus Sutra. It's incredible, isn't it? So although, we may be busy in our lives as whatever, mothers, fathers, bankers, whatever our jobs are, the fact is, this is the Buddha saying this, the fact is that each one of us, beneath all that, deep down, are bodhisattvas of the earth. So sometimes we may not like the idea of being a bodhisattva of the earth. It can't be helped. Because we are. So we might as well stop kicking against whatever you kick against. We are. And of course, in fact, the discovery that we can get so much happiness out of practice, which everyone does if they persevere, get so much happiness about teaching others about Buddhism, get so much happiness because we find we can start to change our unhappy karma and so on and so forth. We realize that we are deep down bodhisattvas of the earth. However much we might try to ignore it, might have tried to ignore it earlier on. So this is an incredible thing with an incredible mission to spread the great law in the dreaded age of Mapo and to establish it, Kosen Rufu, so that its flow would never cease. That is the, if you like, edict, if you like, to the bodhisattvas of the earth, as expounded in the Lotus Sutra, to never allow its flow to cease, ever. This should go on for 10,000 years and beyond into eternity. This is our mission. And we're some of the first. Lots more got to follow, and probably we again will come back and continue. It's quite a thought. But it's an extraordinary mission. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more as we go on with this lecture. I think that's really the main point that I wanted to mention there. When he says at the end, this is because both the law and the object of worship are the reality of Ichinen Sanzen revealed in the Juryo chapter of the essential teaching, are the reality of Ichinen Sanzen. Ichinen Sanzen is the reality of our lives, how our lives work, as I've explained. So in other words, the Gohonzon is nowhere else but within our own lives. We have to struggle to stop thinking the Gohonzon is some sort of god or magic totem or Aladdin's lamp, something outside us. Gohonzon, Nichiren Daishonin said, is nowhere else but within us. The Gohonzon which Nichiren Daishonin inscribed was a most wonderful and treasured means of discovering that actually Buddhahood exists. The Gohonzon exists here, nowhere else but here. So Nichiren Daishonin said in that very first Gosho of the major writings that if we polish our mirror, the mirror of our lives, then more and more as we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the Gohonzon, we can see our own Buddhahood. The Gohonzon is a mirror that we keep in front of us to constantly remind us. So those of you who haven't got Gohonzon yet, don't worry. You have a vision of the Gohonzon because you chant the Gohonzon maybe at Richmond or at Taplow Court or in a friend's house and at district meetings and so on. That is your life. That was a famous television program, wasn't it? But please remember that. Please remember that. This is not some power outside yourself. As I've explained in my very sort of short explanation of Ichinen Sanzen, the power is in you, right there inside you, and wherever you go, you carry it with you. You can never leave it behind. You can never lose it, and no one can ever take it away from you. That's where the power is. Incredible. Wonderful discovery. At least I think so. So, we read now the next paragraph. Suzanne?
We're actually going to take just two short sections from this paragraph and the next paragraph, the first sentence of the next paragraph, and from the second sentence of the paragraph that follows. The two Buddhas, Shakyamuni and Taho, are merely functions of the true Buddha, while Myoho Renge-kyo is actually the true Buddha. Here, the true Buddha is the common mortal, whereas provisional Buddhas means the Buddha. Nevertheless, there is a clear distinction between a Buddha and a common mortal, in that a common mortal is deluded, while a Buddha is enlightened. The common mortal fails to realize that he himself possesses both the entity and the function of the Buddha's three properties.
Can you read it once more? Such an important paragraph.
Here, the true Buddha is the common mortal, whereas provisional Buddhas means the Buddha. Nevertheless, there is a clear distinction between a Buddha and a common mortal, in that a common mortal is deluded, while a Buddha is enlightened. The common mortal fails to realize that he himself possesses both the entity and the function of the Buddha's three properties.
It's really no wonder he was so careful to warn people to be secret at that time. Because he is saying, here the true Buddha is the common mortal. In other words, the true Buddha is the ordinary person, who nevertheless chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the Gohonzon. The true Buddha is you, each one of you. So if he'd said that in the Middle Ages in Japan, in the midst of a ruthless samurai regime, all hell would have let loose on him. They didn't want human beings to be so powerful, ordinary human beings. They didn't mind being powerful themselves. But you imagine how their imagination would work. All these people who were just serfs and peasants becoming Buddhas or revealing Buddhahood was the last teaching they wanted to encourage. They were keeping the country under control by an iron fist at that time. So Nichiren Daishonin said, keep it secret for the time being. So the provisional Buddha in this paragraph is Shakyamuni Buddha, who taught the Lotus Sutra and opened the road, if you like, prepared the way for Nichiren Daishonin, the self-enlightened Buddha, the original Buddha whose task it is to begin everything in the latter day of the law, in all the planets, worlds of the universe where something equivalent to human beings exist, carried out his task and fulfilled it, to set the ball rolling, which we're keeping rolling today. And if we ever stopped, this would be so much against the will and teaching of Nichiren Daishonin and, of course, all the Buddhas of the universe. So now on, because of time, we can't read the whole thing through, but we'll take various passages. And the first one we're going to deal with is third paragraph on from where we are.